If you go in with enough other Republicans, we could have a Speaker McCarthy. With this power, we could finally see repeal and replace. Would you vote to repeal and replace, and what are the highlights of the specific parts of your plan to replace it with?
Thank you for having me, and I hope am I speaking?
Yep.
Can everybody hear me? Thank you.
Great.
My name is Eleanor Vasali. I'm glad to take the first question. So if I remember correctly, yes, I would vote to repeal and replace. And the concept of the plan that I would propose, as I'm looking at my timer, is a free market-based solution for consumers. We should be able to have the option to pick our healthcare plans with the details that work for us. For example, I can pick whether or not I need maternity or other options. They should be able to be negotiated across state lines. And ideally, I would also like to see healthcare plans separated from the employer. We hear over and over again people say that they are staying at a job because that is the only way that they can carry their healthcare plan. So free market choices for the consumer would be the basis. Thank you.
Great. Scott Bland.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Scott Bland. Thank you guys for everybody coming out for this time to hear us out and where we stand on the positions. On healthcare, I agree with repeal and replace. In my mind, the healthcare bill, the Obamacare bill, is unconstitutional. The mandate is unconstitutional, and that alone is reason to repeal it. There are some things about Obamacare that are not terrible. Young people being able to stay on their parents' insurance till they're 26 is important for a young person that's going to college and working to pay their college while they're going. They need to have that safety net to be on their parents' insurance a little bit longer to get through it. And we need to make sure we take care of our people with pre-existing conditions, not leave them behind. I agree that we need to turn the system over to a free market system, be able to trade insurance policies across state lines. We have a diabetic in Texas. There's a great policy in Maryland for insulin payments. They should be able to get that policy. But we also need to look at what we're doing locally here with Baylor Scott and White, the accountable care organization that they have here. Insurance companies are latching onto that. The private sector can work with insurance to make this a better system. It's happening here in our district. I want to foster those ideas.
Thank you, Scott. George Heineman.
Hello, everyone. I've said all along, ever since I started campaigning, that Obamacare needs to be repealed and replaced. There are two main provisions of Obamacare that have greatly driven up the cost of health care. The community age ratings cause many young people to pay 2 or 3 times the amount of money that they have to. Other things are the essential health benefits provision. That drives up the cost. So Obamacare needs to be repealed. And what it needs to be replaced with are 3 things that I've outlined in my past plans. The first one is we need to be able to have health insurance companies sell plans across state lines. That would radically increase the competition that everybody has in their choice of plans. The second thing we need to do is expand health savings accounts. We need pre-tax dollars to go in health savings accounts so that you all can make your own decision about what health plan you want. And the third thing to promote free market competition is that I've been advocating for the elimination of safe harbor provisions in the federal anti-kickback statute, and that would allow healthcare organizations to get better deals and more competition.
Thank you. The current national debt is $20 trillion, and the expected budget deficit for the next year exceeds $1 trillion. Do you consider this to be a national security threat? And if debt rises by interest rates rise by even 2 or 3 percentage points, it would crowd out all discretionary spending. If you consider the debt a problem, what would you plan to do about it? And, that's good. What would you plan to do about the national debt?
It's a great question. Our debt today as of December is $23 trillion, and it was increased by $1 trillion last year. The problem with our national government finances right now, if you look at Medicare and Medicaid spending is 28% of our budget, and these are costing the government way too much money. In 2018, we took in $3.5 trillion. We spent $4.1 trillion. If we could reduce the administrative costs on Medicare and Medicaid, we would have balanced the budget in 2018. So we, as leaders, we need to take on these excess costs in our Medicare and Medicaid program, which we are paying for as taxpayers anyway. And Scott is right in his question, is that right now interest rates are low. If interest rates increase, the percentage of our federal debt going to, our federal budget going to interest rates will increase, which creates a problem for us as we move forward.
David Saucedo.
I think we need to do everything that we can to support President Trump's economic efforts. He's doing everything that he can to increase the economy. Increasing the economy is one of the best things that we can do. But we also need to look at the things the federal government is providing that the federal government has no business providing. We need to work with legislators in Congress to stop the government from misusing the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause has been perverted. They have went far beyond the scope of what the federal government was intended to be. We need to not only do everything that we can to stop allowing the federal government to provide everything for us, but we need to turn public opinion against the federal government that is the source of all of our problems. We need to increase free market solutions to the issues that we see. Healthcare, for instance, I look forward to talking about healthcare solutions that are free market based. We don't need the federal government to do as much as it's doing, and we can do something about it.
Thank you. The next question goes to Renee Swan, Kristen Rowan, and Lori McReynolds. All the candidates but one, Mr. Adnan, have indicated you're pro-life. But how pro-life are you? Have you been pro-life all your life? And how did you come to your decision on the issue?
I'm about as pro-life as you could be, because my life while in my mother's womb was compromised. So this is what I believe we need to do as American citizens, as human beings. We need to have a bill or an act that protects the child that is born alive as the product of a failed abortion. There is no excuse for committing murder and calling it health care. We also need an act that protects and addresses the pain capability of an unborn child. We have scientific data and information. What kind of people are we when we believe that our selfish needs are justified in the suffering of another human being? And finally, we need a Heartbeat Act. Science, medical science determines that death occurs the minute the heart stops. Life begins at conception. But at least let's keep the same tempo and admit that the heartbeat defines life that we should not take, ever.
Thank you. Kristen Alamo Rowan.
I attended a pro-life forum, and I think I see some of the citizens from Pro-Life Action are here with us. And I presented them with a pledge, and I have brought one to present. I'll present this to Scott. What this says is that I pledge to sponsor, co-sponsor, advocate for, and support legislation that protects life from conception till natural death. I pledge to oppose any and all efforts to fund Planned Parenthood with taxpayer dollars. I think that, you know, what Renee said, I can kind of encapsulate it with one solution, and that is to reintroduce H.R. 681 from 2017, which is from our 115th Congress, and that is also known as the Life at Conception Act. I have stood outside of Planned Parenthood here in Waco. I've prayed, I've protested. I am not just a pro-life candidate, I am a pro-life activist. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori McReynolds.
Hi, I'm Lori McReynolds, and I did attend the same meeting that she went to, and it seemed that our congressman took 1.5 years for him to sign it. By the time he signed it, it was too late to get it through in 2018, so it does definitely need to be reintroduced. Is this something of interest to me? It's been part of my life ever since I was a little kid. When I was in high school, not high school, junior high, I had to write a paper about something of interest, and I wrote it on abortion. And I can still vividly remember the pictures of the way they were killing babies. And so it's touched my home. I had an aunt that did this years ago. She was taken advantage of in a ward, and my other aunt took her to get an abortion. And till the day when she died, she was still asking if God had forgiven her. And so I said, yes, God forgave you, but she hadn't forgiven herself. And we need to teach young people this is not a form of birth control, that it's going to affect the rest of your life, and life begins when that baby is conceived. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is Sutton and Eliar Vasselli. Some have said that the border security is one of our nation's most important issues facing us now. Not because conservatives are racist, as the Democrats claim, but because immigration should be measured and controlled just as it is in every other nation in the world. Protection for immigrants against human trafficking, protection of our citizens against terrorist infiltration. What are your specific plans to secure the nation's border, and do you have a plan to deal with illegal immigrants already in this country?
Scott, thank you very much. Hi, Keith Sessions, and thank you for the question. As each person here knows, I served as a member of Congress and as chairman of the Rules Committee. We, over the years, have done many of the things that have been talked about. Texas is the state that is without a wall. All the other states have fencing and walls, and we're doing a pretty good job. But Texas is a large area. We must finish building the wall. But we also have to have an immigration policy, because the immigration policy that was signed into law by President Bush in 2008 gives not only rights, but constitutional rights to people who show up on our territory. President Obama, as you know, invented catch and release. We need to end each of these. I've been a part of making sure we got the border wall. The first $1 billion was put in 2 years ago when I was chairman of the Rules Committee with John Carter, and I believe that we can do that. Lastly, I'm for a guest worker plan with no pathway to citizenship.
Trent Sutton.
Howdy, all. As a prior military man, I view national defense as one of the prime functions that the federal government is supposed to be providing for the nation. I view border security and national defense as being one and the same. I think it is appropriate to build a wall where necessary. I think we also need to be looking at technological and manpower solutions where those make more sense. Concerning the folks that are already here in the country illegally, we have to get them identified. I believe that we can do that by opening up a period of registration so that we can get those folks into the system, get them paying into the system, so that we know who they are and they are receiving benefit, or they are not receiving benefits from the federal government. The second half of that is we need to make E-Verify mandatory. It's currently mandatory for federal employment, but it's not mandatory across the board. And I think that we need to look at those enforcement mechanisms so that we can remove the reward for coming here illegally.
We can help you out, thank you.
Go deep.
Yeah. Eleanor Vasselli.
Thank you. So I'm going to go a little quickly because this is a multi-layered issue. We have a sovereign right to secure our border. With respect to the comment about the wall along the Texas border, absolutely, we need to build a wall. But here in our state, we need to also remember that unlike other states that have more federal lands, we have private property. And so we also need to protect and recognize those private property rights. So we need to build a wall and use the combination of technology where necessary. We need to enforce the laws that are in place. It is unacceptable that a woman in New York should be assaulted by an illegal alien because that city refuses to recognize the ICE detainers. We need to cut funding to cities who do not work with our immigration enforcement policies. And we need to work on our legal immigration, eliminate the lottery program, eliminate the chain migration, and to wrap up and address the last part, for those who are here, we need to work on a program for legal status, but not citizenship.
Thank you. This next question is for Scott Bland and George Hyman, and would have been Mr. Nunn. Social Security never really had a lockbox, no matter what Al Gore said. And the system is on course to become insolvent in a few short years. What solutions do you have to solve this looming problem?
Thank you, Scott. Social Security is the perfect example of our government breaking its promises. This is a complicated issue. There's not one solution to it. There are going to be some very hard decisions that are going to have to be made. So I've got to make sure that we elect people that will be the adults in the room to go through those hard decisions and make those decisions that are necessary so that we can maintain our promise to our seniors. Specifically, one of the things that I look at as being potentially a good idea, although again, it's one of those hard solutions, but look at raising the retirement age for those of us under the age of 55. Raise the retirement age to 70, and then index it to our life expectancy rate. That maintains the solvency in the system. That alone can keep the system solvent so that we can maintain the promises to our seniors. But again, this is one of the areas that's the perfect example of what is broken in our government today. Government cannot make promises and then back out on them. We have got to take care of our seniors and make sure that those promises are kept to them.
George Hyman.
Social Security is insolvent, and one of the things that we need to recognize is the baby boomer generation is getting older, and it needs to be supported by the millennials and the Gen Zers. And one of the most important things that we can do is have a robust economy. Economic growth will help Social Security insolvency. We can get good paying jobs so that millennials and Gen Zers can actually, have a family and pay their contributions to the plan. Social Security will have less of an insolvency issue. So we need lower taxes and we need less regulations to promote a strong economy. Now, a specific plan that I proposed for Social Security is that we first need to make sure that anybody who's on Social Security or close to retirement age, that promise is kept for them. But for those who are young, 50 or below, we need to look at some options. And one of the options I propose is having a private plan where you can, if you want to, optionally contribute part of your Social Security funds that you contribute, put it into a plan and have it indexed ETF funds so that you can get a better rate of return, and that way you have help with the solvency of the Social Security program.
The next question goes to Todd Kent, David Sacedo, and Renee Swan. This question is on religious freedom and faith. The left seems on a warpath against free speech, prayer, anywhere, and to remove God from any part of American life. How does faith impact your decision-making process, and what specifically do you have in mind to do in Congress to protect religious freedoms and quell the left agenda to end it?
Faith has been a big part of my life. In fact, I started my career working for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in El Paso, Texas. I founded a nationwide Christian training organization called Worldview Academy, which has trained over 35,000 students. And I tell you that because it's been a lifestyle for us. And I believe that we have to keep the government out of the church, out of religion. When I was working in El Paso, the Congress passed the Equal Access Act, which allowed us to meet on school campuses. That is a proper role for Congress to make sure that the federal government is not impeding religion, but giving opportunity for students on their own to exercise their religious faith. So my faith is a driver in my decision making, and throughout my life, faith has helped me to understand the world differently. When we put on those glasses that we look through Scripture, that helps us to know what is right and what is wrong. And as a congressman, I will fight any attempts to impede religion in our public places.
Thanks, Todd. David Sacedo.
So my faith is inseparable from me. One, I would like to point out the fact that the separation of church and state is a myth. It was based on a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a Baptist organization saying that we are not going to put one faith over another. So we need to take back the narrative and stop allowing the left to win the social argument. We have learned from great leaders in the past, like Frederick Douglass and Dr. Martin Luther King, that we do not have to comply with these things. We do not have to let them control this narrative. We need people that are willing to go beyond their artificial boundaries. and I am that type of candidate. So whether I'm in Congress, whether I'm in a public school, whether I'm in the courthouse, I will be the type of leader that our founders were at the founding of our nation. They met at the courthouse. They allowed different faiths and different pastors to preach in the courthouse and share that platform because we were not afraid of our faith. We founded this nation with our faith in God.
Renee Swan.
So I think as everyone on this panel who has professed Christianity, I stand with them. There is one thing that you need to know about me. The Word of God is exactly the life source that causes me to thrive each and every day. It is His written teaching and instruction for all mankind. His Spirit is present in us and available to each one of us so that we can understand the heart of the matter. So when it comes to the Constitution of this United States that was founded, fought for, bled for, died for by our founding fathers, it was because they believed the same principles I just expressed to you. Therefore, they established this nation as one people, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That is the core of all religion. Liberty, justice, mercy, and grace. The only reason the people in Washington don't understand that don't, is because they don't know God. So I will stand there as a beacon of light and a representation of His truth and His Spirit.
For Kristen, Lori McReynolds, and Pete Sessions. Some advocate for term limits to elected office, but the retort is often that you leave government in the hands of the permanent bureaucracy of the DC swamp. What is your position on term limits? And if they were imposed on elected officials, would you consider putting a 10-year limit on any federal employment, period, in order to keep the swamp rats from just trading seats? I like my plan. Do you? Go, Kristen.
I would like to touch on the previous question, if I may. Faith is the foundation of my life. I was blessed to have been born and raised in Texas. You know, we're in the Bible Belt, so I have a strong foundation in Christ, and I have from my youth. And so that is the only reason I'm here, is because God called me to be here. I have no political aspirations, but I think what we've got in Washington is a mess, and we need a true beacon, a true light, someone who will stand firm in God to help clear that out, drain the swamp. And to that point, draining the swamp, I have signed the Congressional Term Limits Pledge. And the reason that I did that is for the reasons that were just outlined. We even see it in our Department of Justice and the FBI. We see all these mistakes that are being made. Why are there mistakes being made? These are supposed to be the most prestigious agencies. So I think that I believe in term limits. However, I also believe in solutions like taking money out of politics to help aid. So if we can take money out of politics, I guarantee you we will not need term limits. Thank you.
Lori McReynolds.
One of the reasons that I decided to stay out of politics about 20 years ago was because I went down to Texas and we were trying to push a rule through for the dry cleaners. And the very first person we walked up to that was a lobbyist for the case said, "I've got his vote." And I said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "Because he owes me." That's what's wrong with Washington. Everybody owes everybody. So I'm definitely for term limits. When I've been out campaigning, the first thing that everybody says to me is, "Do you believe in term limits?" I said, absolutely. That's what's wrong with Washington. Everybody owes everybody, and then things don't get done. When everything stays the same, the status quo, we don't see any changes. There's things up there that need to be gotten rid of, and you can't get rid of it because you've got the people that don't leave. So I've already decided the longest I will be there will be 6 years. I want to go up there and help President Trump get things done. He's fighting against these people that have been there for so long that don't want to make any changes, and he has really messed things up in Washington. So yes, I'm for term limits.
Pete Sessions.
Thank you very much. Hi, Pete Sessions. In 1994, I was the leader for Texans for term limitation as we sold not only the issues and ideas, but made sure that they would go to Congress. I won in 1997. I was the leader in the United States Congress on the floor to make sure that we would get term limits. They did not pass. It requires 290 members of Congress to do it. I am for term limits, but they have to apply to every single member. Our party has found a way to make it popular, and so we have a whole bunch of members that go up and stay for 6 years or 8 years and come back home. In 2010, I was chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, and we got 63 net new Republicans to come and be a part of what we were doing. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to win the majority. We have to send people there who understand how to win the majority and to hold these seats. When Republicans have policies that work, it makes life better for everybody. So I'm for term limits, but I'm also for winning the majority.
Trish, your question goes back to the religious freedom agenda and that the left is trying to remove faith and freedom from the public square. How does faith play a role in your life, and is it, do you have any plans specifically to deal with protections of religious freedom?
Howdy again, Trent Sutton. So obviously every single one of us comes from some sort of a faith-based background. My grandmother that I grew up with, I lived with them for several years, was a Sunday school teacher, and she's the one that imparted to me my faith and my value system. One of the things that everybody forgets is that, the United States was founded for religious freedom. And the intent was never to keep religion out of government. It was to keep the government out of religion and from interfering. We need to get back to a mindset so that we are exercising our faith, because that is what guides us. The federal government needs to be stepping out. One of the things that the left is pushing is, take the Colorado Baker case. Churches should have the freedom to choose how they want to practice their religion without government interference. That was what this country was founded upon. So getting the government back out of interfering with religion, allowing religious freedom, and for us to practice our values is what we need to be getting back to, and preserving those protections.
Wow, they all did a great job on the first rounds of questions. Don't you agree? But then they have the last few minutes to tell you why you should vote for them and why you should go tell your friends to vote for them. This is it, folks. Early voting's already started. Now's the time for them to make their final sales pitch. Eleanor Pacelli.
We're laughing because we're a bit confused. So 2 minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
You can do whatever you want with them.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll stick to the program, thank you.
All right.
My name is Eleanor Vasali. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you for Republican Club, to the Republican Club for holding this to keep everybody engaged and informed. So I'm going to go through quickly a couple of things. What inspired me to run? First and foremost, I know that throughout the district we want a representative that is going to fight on our behalf. If you read more about my story on votevasali.com, you will see that I do not back down to bullies, that I will stand up to those special interests we've talked about, stand up to the swamp. I will be a champion of conservative principles on your behalf. Secondly, I believe I have a unique professional story. I've worked in corporate, I've been a public school teacher, and now I'm managing a small business. That gives me a variety of experience to understand all the issues that we're dealing with in Congress and how the solutions needed will affect all of the families in the district. Lastly, I have a unique personal story. I'm a Christian, Catholic, and I'm an immigrant, a naturalized citizen. I did not come here to live under the failed socialist policies that the left is pushing on us. I will be a champion of those conservative principles. I want to be a leader on your behalf to take that narrative back for the Republican Party and remind everybody why our conservative principles are key to our liberties and to our prosperity. I'm running for Congress to change the status quo. I'm running because I love America. My family story, it's what the American dream is all about. I will fight every day in Congress to protect our liberties and to preserve that shining city on a hill. So vote Vasali. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you, guys. Let me tell you why I am in this race. I'm in this race because I'm concerned for our national security. As a federal agent, I spend a lot of time on the border. With the Border Patrol guys, I've seen the prayer rugs that they find on their border surveys. The media narrative that this is an immigration crisis or a humanitarian crisis, it's not true. They're lying to you. This is a national security issue. We have got to seal the border. We need to get our National Guard, bring them home, put them down on the border to help our border guys out, build the wall where we can, use the technology that I know about as an agent that we used at the ranch where 3 of us could secure Bush's ranch with our technology, and it's way better now. We can stop that flow of traffic. Once we do that, we need to address the people who are here. I'm a builder. I own a commercial, custom home building company. I've got a workforce crisis. I want a work visa program. I want these people to have the opportunity to present themselves for a background check. If they can pass a background check, prove they're working, they can apply for that work visa, stay here and work. It's not citizenship. It's not a pathway to citizenship. But they're going to pay taxes. They're going to be able to work here without looking over their shoulder, and our employers can hire them without being criminals. Secondly, I'm very concerned about the attack on our Second Amendment. As a federal agent, I took a lot of guns off a lot of bad guys. I never took one off a bad guy that was registered in their name. Bad guys don't follow gun laws. Gun laws make easy victims. I know that from a practical perspective. We've got to protect our Second Amendment. Lastly, my family. I'm the adopted father of 2 beautiful children. My wife and I couldn't have kids the traditional way. We talk about faith, what guides our faith. My daughter was left for dead in China by the side of the road, far northern province, at 3 weeks old. She was left to die of exposure. A farmer heard her crying. Her Chinese name is Ray Kun, literally means lucky earth, because she was found on the ground before she died. Her name is now Reagan. She's my beautiful daughter. She means everything in the world to me. She's why I'm here doing this. I hope for your vote. I pray for your vote. My name is Scott Bland. Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Scott. George Hyman.
Hi, everybody. I'm George Hyman. I'm sort of known in the campaign trail as the Christian conservative rocket scientist. I worked at NASA, and I trained astronauts and mission controllers on how to use the computers and navigation equipment aboard the space shuttle. And now I'm the owner of Keystone Aerospace, which does advanced aerospace research and development. But the reason I'm running is because of my family. The thing that I like to tell people is that my biggest accomplishment is that I'm a Christian husband and father, and that the thing I'm proudest of is marrying my wife Delia and having our 2 kids, George and Helen. And that is why I am running, because I want to protect their future. And I am a strong conservative. That is why I've been endorsed by all the major conservative groups in the state. Texas Right to Life has endorsed me. I'm the only candidate that has that endorsement. Texas Homeschool Network, Texas Values, Central Texas Republican Assembly, Young Conservatives of Texas have all endorsed me. I'm a strong conservative. I'm also the first one to say that I would join the Freedom Caucus if I'm elected, because we need to have somebody go to Washington and push back on the leadership to get things done, like correct the budget problems that we have. Now, I understand that some people don't agree with somebody going to join the Freedom Caucus. And I think we're all Republicans here, and we all agree that if you're reasonable, there's different ways to attack the problem. And what I'm here to say is, I'm going to join the Freedom Caucus. If you're one of those people who think that's a little too strong, there are 3 good candidates on this dais that would make fine choices. Scott Bland, Todd Kent, and Trent Sutton have been operating their campaigns with honor and integrity. And furthermore, they are knowledgeable on the issues. So if you want somebody to go to Washington and join the Freedom Caucus and fight for your interests, I'm your guy. If you don't agree with the Freedom Caucus, you have 3 good candidates to choose from. So what I want everybody here to know is I'm going to Washington to fight for you. And I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Todd Kent.
When Baylor University seeks a football coach, they establish hiring criteria, they review resumes, because they want to find somebody with the experience and the expertise to be successful. We do the same thing in our businesses. Why would we not do the same thing when it comes to hiring somebody for Congress that's going to represent us? We need somebody that's going to go to the 435-member House and be a leader there, and not just be somebody who sits in a seat and votes Republican. My broad private sector experience has made me that very person. I've worked at the highest levels of academics, which is important because we have 2 major universities here in this district, Texas A&M and Baylor University. I have a PhD in political science. I have lived and worked in 2 countries, South Korea and the Middle East, which gives me an insight that I believe a member of Congress needs into what's happening in the world sphere. I worked as a consultant, a political consultant before my academic career, where I helped elect Republicans throughout the country and throughout this state, and even throughout this district. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, I have experience working in the private sector, the nonprofit world, training young people how to thrive in this world that we're fighting today through Worldview Academy and through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So my point is, we need to elect somebody not symbolically, but we need to elect somebody with substance, who's got that experience, that expertise, that preparation to go to Washington and make a difference. In every congressional session, there are over 11,000 bills filed. 5% of those will get an actual vote. Only 1% becomes law. So the skills that a congressman needs are the skills to be able to get other people to come alongside them to pass the legislation that we need in our country. Thank you, and vote Todd Kemp for Congress.
Thank you, Todd. David Salcedo.
So in 2010, I learned about this nation because liberty-loving conservatives mobilized to support candidates that promised to restore the Constitution, that promised to repeal Obamacare, that promised to protect life, that made commercials that were beautiful commercials, scripted, awesome-looking commercials, and they gained our support. And they went, some of them, went to Washington and violated those pledges. So I ask that you look at our walk. Don't listen to our talk. Do not vote for a commercial. Do not vote for someone who says, my experience can change Washington, because me personally, I believe that's naive. Somebody just scored. I have the relationships and the experience to expand the Republican Party beyond our base. We will fill this room with young people who have a future and understand, because we will teach them the history. Whether I win or lose this race, I'm home. I've been traveling the nation, building organizations with a great company, but now I'm home. And we will win our youth. We will educate them. I'm the only candidate that's canvassing in minority communities, and as a party that was the party founded to abolish slavery, that is not good enough for us. So we have to mobilize and win. I'm being endorsed by K. Carl Smith, who is one of President Trump's advisors on Black Voices for Trump 2020. He'll be flying in next week. We will be doing some things with him. But I just want to invite all of you all, and I have invited every candidate up here next Thursday at the American Legion Post 121 in Elmont. We will have a roundtable debate, and I would encourage all the candidates, let's exchange ideas and let's see the depth of knowledge that we have about our founding, our history, the legislative process. That's what you should vote for, the most knowledgeable and understanding candidate. God bless you all. David Salcedo for Congress. I'd love to earn your vote.
Thank you, David. Renee Swan.
I thank each and every one of you for being here today, because you're here not only as interested citizens, you're here as patriots. You're participating in a process that is precious and unique to the rest of the world. A strong America is a better world. So when I stepped into this race, it was not because I ever had political aspiration, but because I had the heart of the matter of the people in this country and my grandchildren that were coming forth from the history that I had benefited from. In less than 20 years, we have seen a socialist country go from being one of the 4th most prosperous country in the world to now having citizens dying of starvations in the street and being killed because their freedoms have been taken away. Socialism is real. It is the goal of the Democrats. They are no longer shy in telling us that is their goal. I have not fought on a battlefield. This is my opportunity to step to the front line and to fire artillery that I can bring to the table regarding their determination to persuade each and every one of you out there and anyone else that is foolish enough to fall for it, that socialized medical care, single-payer system is the answer. They have worked fear into your lives. They have separated a relationship with you, with your physician. They have taken away your individual rights to determine, self-determination of your health and well-being. They have done it with our economy. They want to do it with the energy sector. They have no plans to build this country, only to destroy it. With every breath that I have, for the rest of my life, I will spend using my energies and my expertise to build this country. We live in a fantastic district. I have seen the people, learned of this district, and I will cherish each and every vote, and I will hold it as sacred. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Kristen Alamo Rowan.
My name is Kristen Alamo Rowan, and I'm a Christian wife, mom of 3 boys, and a business owner. And I say that the 2 most important things to know about me are that I'm a Christian and a constitutional conservative. Some of the things that I would like to do are protect life from conception, as I mentioned. That's why I'm endorsed by Molly White, who is a pro-life activist and a former Texas state representative. I would support a balanced budget amendment because I believe that if the budget is not balanced, the government is far too large. It's bigger than it was intended to be. I also will protect the Second Amendment as written, shall not be infringed, and I will protect religious liberty and uphold the Constitution. I tout my lifelong residency in Texas that has afforded me the perspective of living in the greatest place on earth. I am going to serve, not lead. As a servant should know the people. They should know the needs, the struggles, and the desires, and I understand that because I have lived it. Leaders can lead you right off of a cliff, and I intend to serve you. I know what it feels like to run a household, to run a business, and to be under the burden of government and out-of-control healthcare costs. I've spent my entire career bringing 2 opposing forces to fair deals. As you know, in a real estate transaction, the seller wants to make the most possible, and the buyer wants to spend the least amount possible. My background has prepared me to be a good negotiator, facilitator, innovator, and a trailblazer. I will be a true voice, a true representative, and a true servant. I don't want to lead you. I want to work to ensure that the government gets off your back so we can live free and righteous in the greatest place on earth. I encourage you to research the candidates. Although there are many of us, there are clear distinctions in a Republican and a constitutional conservative. On March 3rd, remember the Alamo. Thank you.
Lori McReynolds.
It's hard to beat that one. Anyway, I am Lori McReynolds, and I am running for Congress. And if you've never met me before, please visit my website, LoriMcReynolds.com. There's many of y'all in here that have seen me around Waco for over the last 35 years. I've probably dry cleaned your clothes and tried to keep it clean so you look good out in public. I'm very successful in my business. I have been very successful in Waco for over 35 years. And you don't get that just because you go to work every day. You do it because you lead people. And I've been leading a lot of young people for a really long time, and a lot of older people too. And I've been a role model to a lot of people. People call me up and want to find out how to do something, even if they don't even work for me anymore. They call me and they ask me how to buy a car, or they ask me how to buy a house. And that means that they learned something from me. I taught them how to communicate. It's very important that when we go to Washington that people perceive you and they like you. You cannot get things done if they don't like you. So you've got to be likable, and they want to be able to work with you. I really feel like that I'm committed to this job. Y'all have been committed to me for over 35 years in Waco. It's time. I've lived the American dream. I never thought I was going to be a politician. But again, what brought me to the race? It's this closeness that we're getting to socialism. It scares me. It scares me to death. And I never really thought I was going to be a politician. Y'all heard earlier why I didn't want to be a politician, so I never thought I would be doing this. And I'm probably the worst speaker of everybody in here, but when I talk to you one-on-one, you will know my heart, and you know that the reason I'm doing this is I really believe that God brought me to this race. He knows who's going to win. We don't know who's going to win yet, but He already has the plan. And whatever the plan is, I'm on board with it. I'm going to support whoever wins. And I just know that we, as a group here, y'all, I know you're committed because you're at this visit, but please tell your friends to be committed to the Republican Party. We have got to see the platform that it's more clear now than ever since Trump has been there that we know what we believe. We've got to get behind him. Thank you very much.
Pete Sessions.
Thank you very much. I want to go back. I did not get the question, but the pro-life question, H.R. 681, which seems to be the gold standard. I was an original co-sponsor on this bill. I am a part of the pro-life internal working in the United States Congress and was the original co-sponsor. I'm Pete Sessions, and I was born and raised in Waco, Texas. Received my Eagle Scout Award here. My dad served as McLennan County Republican Party chairman back when it was not a two-party state. I have been a Republican my whole life. I have been to every single Republican convention and national convention to support our nominees and to make sure that we would win. I spent 17 years with AT&T and Southwestern Bell Telephone Company before I became a member of Congress. As a member of Congress, I served as chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee when we had our backs against the wall, and we won 63 net seats because we sold the fight, raised the money, and had the ideas that would be necessary to defeating, at that time, Nancy Pelosi. I was quite honestly retired and happy, and I received calls from people from the part of the district, about 40% of this district that I had previously represented for 8 years. They asked me to please come and help because our party is losing this cycle 31 experienced Republicans who've simply chosen that it's time for them to come home. We lost 37 Republicans, key Republicans, the cycle before. Ladies and gentlemen, we have unfinished business, but we must win back the majority if we are going to have any of our ideas take the light of day. And that is why I have a group of people who understand what my leadership meant, not just as chairman of the House Rules Committee, but also to this entire country, knowing how to win the majority. I'm devoted to that. I appreciate your vote and support, and thank you very much. God bless you.
Trent Sutton.
I'm convinced I'm going to run out of time real quick here, because first I want to address your question about the bureaucracy, because nobody actually answered that. I think that the answer is not term limiting government employees, but rather reducing the size of government, because that gives us better transparency so that we can see into that government and remove some of the power from that bureaucracy. Second, I want to address, I've had several folks, I believe somebody has been making assertions that I'm not pro-life. That is absolutely false. I have said from the very get-go that I believe life begins at conception. But just as President Reagan, I'm very much a move the bar guy. It is not in the purview of federal legislation. Well, it can be. But I don't know that that's something that we can get past. I think that we need to be working for every incremental victory that we can get. I'm a huge proponent of heartbeat legislation because I think that is something that we can sell to the public and can get passed. And that right there has the opportunity to almost instantly save and prevent 75% of the abortions that occur in this nation. Another thing that I wanted to address was the Freedom Caucus. I absolutely would work with the Freedom Caucus on those areas where I believe that they are on the right path. They were instrumental in the defense of President Trump during the impeachment, and I would have been right there storming the skiff with them. However, I will not join the Freedom Caucus because I will not toe any line. I've got a vast line of commanding officers through my time in the military that will tell you that. I am my own individual, and I am going to vote for the district, and I will not be beholden to any group, whether that be the Freedom Caucus or party leadership. So, with that being said, going into this election, obviously you've got a lot of choices, and for the vast majority of things, we do have very similar stances. So it's about the type of individual that you want to send to Washington. I served 21 years in the Marine Corps. I have a proven record of service. I also have the educational background to back that up with an advanced degree in international affairs. I look at things long-term solutions, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You know, one thing I'm struck by